Salutaters, my potats, it is I, Rave, and I am back with another episode of Read with Rave, a series in which I read books or short stories written by myself or by some of my friends. A couple of small disclaimers. Disclaimer number one, I have already gotten permission from my friends to read their books or short stories so as to avoid copyright. That being said, I will have links to their social media down in the description below. Disclaimer number two, these books and short stories are not meant for children. The average audience is teens or young adults, so if you are a young child, please jump off this video and return when I have gaming or art videos. Today, I will be reading The Crossroads Planet, Book 1 of the Crossroads series by Robert Field. Chapter 10. Market day dawned with lowering skies and pelting rain, but in the suite the sun might as well have been shining in a clear blue sky. Crystal awoke first, as per usual, and opted for a quick shower to be at her freshest. Then she prepared not one, but 2 mugs of the popular hot herbal tea, retrieved the snacks they had laid in for the occasion, and, placing them on a tray, she went noiselessly back to where Lance lay sleeping in his bedroom. Placing the tray on the bedside table, she hung her robe on its peg and slipped back into bed with him. Kissing him on the cheek, she said, "Good morning, my love." Lance opened his eyes and stared into hers. "Good morning, my darling." "What's this? Tea and snacks?" He winked. "Is it market day already?" He yawned and sat up. Crystal sat up, then handed him his mug, the one she'd bought for him, then got her mug. Crystal smiled uncertainly, and her caress on his cheek trembled a little. "Oh, Lance, I don't know about this. I thought I would be ready, but now I'm not sure." Lance took her free hand with his free hand and held it firmly, warmly. "Is this the girl who all last week boosted my confidence with hers so I would feel comfortable performing magic? Well, Chris, let me tell thee a thing or two. Of all the girls I've been with, I don't think any was a virgin. They all knew what they wanted, which was apparently to add one to a growing list of lovers that they shared with their girlfriends. Or after I had developed somewhat of a reputation, they wanted a piece of the notoriety, too. I'm not sure they cared at all about the actual act, so long as it met the basic requirement of a score. Girls may have had big expectations of me, but they certainly never told me what they wanted." Crystal looked at him with an incredulous smile on her face. Then at last a light began to draw in her eyes. "So what you're saying is that you don't know what I expect, and I don't either." Lance grinned, then adopted a more sober expression. "What does thee want?" "Well, of all the girls' stories I've listened to, the ones who I was certain weren't just telling tales, they said that in their opinion the better guys were always gentle. So please, my love, be very gentle with me, and slow." Lance nodded. "One thing I can tell you is that I have found that the girl must be ready. Being close and touching helps to make a girl ready. That much I have been told." Crystal absorbed this information, took a large swallow of tea, then set her mug down and turned to him. Lance laid his mug down and faced her. Crystal reached out and shyly touched him on the cheek, and slid her hand down his neck to his chest. Lance reacted by reaching out to her. His caress began at her shoulder and continued down to the small of her back. Crystal felt a tingle begin within her, but not quite the same as the presence of magic. It started where he was touching her and spread throughout her. "Is this a kind of magic?" Crystal asked. "Just the ordinary sort anyone can invoke." "Can you teach me? Be the master?" "Yes, my dear. Class is now in session," he replied with a glint in his eye. First bell rang, then breakfast bell. The door to Lance and Crystal's suite opened. Lance and Crystal stepped out. They were warmly attired, Crystal in her dark blue cloak, and Lance in a thick, full-length black cloak. Hoods up, they strode out into the steady rain. Through the rain, the buildings on campus could scarcely be made out. Side by side they walked, wrapped in their cloaks. They made their way around the campus and exited the inner campus through the north gate, and crossed the outer campus to exit at the main gate. The rain did not let up at all, but kept its steady pelt. Crystal shivered a little and drew on some spirit energy to warm herself. Soon she was pleasantly warm. Neither Lance nor Crystal dared extend an arm to the other for fear of getting soaked, but they turned to gaze at one another frequently. Presently they arrived in town and made for the square where market was in session, a little bedraggled owing to the weather, and with scarcely a soul present. Some of the booths were in fact shut up against the weather, and the usual display of wares was greatly curtailed. Still, Lance had mentioned it was possible to make a good bargain on such a day when business was poor. They made for a booth selling hot foods. A large portion of the tent flap covered most of the entrance, and inside it was warm and cozy. They both took large portions of a hot, thick stew with heated wine to drink. They sat at a table in the corner. "I've been thinking," said Lance, when they had taken the initial edge off their hunger and thirst, "that I feel closer to thee today that we've made love for the first time." Crystal nodded. "That's pretty much as Mary explained it to me. When a heart bond forms, it is in response to a seeking sent out by both our hearts. When newly formed, it's weak. It grows stronger the more we interact with each other." Lance nodded. "Well, lover, how did I do?" Crystal looked lovingly into his eyes. "My love, my lover, thee was wonderful," she replied softly. There was a silence for a while as they applied themselves to eating. After lunch they made their way through the square, looked into the few shops that were open without buying anything, and made their way back to the college. The rain had tapered off considerably as they passed the grove by the river where they had first kissed. "I've brought any number of girls to this spot, loved them in the evenings after a feasting, but all that is nothing as I've met thee." They walked on to the west gate of the college and stood for a moment in the shelter of the gate before proceeding up the hill into the inner campus. Once inside the gate, Lance led the way into a small building closed by, which turned out to be a smithy, currently disused, but certainly usable. Lance and Crystal sat down on a bench as the rain picked up again. "This is one of my hiding places on campus," Lance said. "There's any number of little places to go, mostly unused since the Baron was driven out. The forge here is where the Baron had his weapons and armor made or repaired. There isn't much call for that sort of metalworking these days. Mostly stuff is down in town, and training armor is repaired at the cell. About the only thing outright removed from this place was the wall of the stakes in the outer compound, since replaced by the maze of hedges and gardens. Some sunny day I'll show you around it." They took off their cloaks and sat down with their arms around each other. "Lover, thee should practice with the spirit filaments, and thee does not mind," Crystal smiled. "I've been paying close attention in grammar class. Can thee tell?" Lance smiled. "Us'll make a regular crossroader of thee yet. Say, we do have Mary's practice session again tomorrow. I haven't tried any of the exercises since the night at the hot tub. Are we going to try in the dream glade or in the real world?" "I'd like to see thee, try it in the real world first. Summon the spirit sight and follow my lead. I'll go slow." The first hour was agony for both of them, but she didn't have to supplement his energy level near as much, and he was able, after much concentration, to recreate the triangle that he had constructed while in the dream state. "Chris," he said finally. "Chris, that's good enough for now, isn't it?" She nodded. "Then could we go to the dream glade for a while?" "Yes, my darling. We need to be able to do it at will. There's some kinds of magic as can be performed only in that state." Crystal embraced him tightly, and he put his arms around her as well. Together they stared into each other's eyes. The dreamy looks appeared almost instantly this time, and soon the sight of the smithy and the sound of the rain had faded away. Lance and Crystal sat together in the sunny glen. Lance looked at Crystal. Crickets chirped pleasantly all around them. Now, I've forgotten why I wanted us to come here. Well, it's nicer here than being in the real world on a rainy day. So, was I up to your expectations this morning? Her words sounded sweetly in his mind. Crystal, compared to thee, other girls are empty shells, shallow wells. These beyond comparison with them. I don't imagine taking another after thee. Physically, these about average, but the rapport we shared adds a depth to the experience that no other girl can match. The love visibly streamed from his eyes and bathed her in warmth. She melted against him, and the two of them rolled to lie facing each other. Eagerly they kissed, the passion growing between them. They removed their clothes and lay together in the sunny grove. Their passion materialized as a pale pink cloud, blotting out all but the two of them, floating in each other's arms as they slowly rotated weightlessly. Increasing in intensity, it finally burst, leaving them floating in mid-air in the old smithy, this time not bound up in spirit filaments, but softly descending to lie on the mat made of their cloaks. Lance reacted first. "Well, I reckon there's not many a girl in town that could do that," he exclaimed. Crystal chuckled. "Lover, do you still doubt our ability to do magic together?" Lance replied, "Is thee certain thee did not do all the levitation thyself?" Crystal paused for a moment to consult spirit sight. "Positively certain. My love, my lover, we both glow with residual spirit energy that can only come from actively participating in magic. I have seen it often enough during practice." He shut his eyes for a moment. "Damn, thee's right. I can do magic as good as thee when I'm with thee. We're a team, now and forever." Crystal stood up and shivered, suddenly cold all over. Curious, she sat down again, feeling perfectly warm. "Check this out. It must be 80 degrees right where we're lying, but move a foot away from the cloaks and it's freezing." She reached out for her clothes. "Oh, and one other thing. I don't mind being spontaneous, but if you have some reason for wanting to enter the dream world, let me know what it is so I can help you remember what it was." Lance stood up and stepped off the cloaks. "Brrr! Talk about the heat of the moment! Damned if I can remember what it was now. Guess it'll come back to me." He, too, grabbed some clothes. They bundled up and strode out into the rain. Back in Third North, Lance and Crystal arrived to a scene of confusion. They were met by Amanda, who had a frustrated expression on her face. "There's something making a hideous racket coming from your rooms." As they got closer, Crystal could hear an all too familiar strident tone emanating from their suite. "It's my communicator!" Her face fell. "Oh no, Daddy must have come back. I was sure he wouldn't abandon his trade schedule for anything short of an interplanetary war." She clutched at Lance in a blind panic. "He'll—" "Take a deep breath, please, dearest. First things first." He unlocked the door to the suite. "Can thee silence this bloody din?" Lance marched Crystal toward her room. Crystal flung open the wardrobe and got out the communicators. She muted each in turn, then she took one and sat down in her bed. "Lance, I need my computer," she said quietly. Lance stepped out, then reappeared carrying her computer gingerly. She opened it and inserted the communicator into a slot on the side. Immediately, information appeared on the screen, which she read carefully. She looked up at Lance. "It's my father, all right. His ship's on orbit right now. He'll be at landing in 12 hours. That's basically the message that accompanies his page. I had disabled the location reporting circuits before I left the ship, so he doesn't know exactly where I am. However, he's a shrewd guesser, and that, coupled with a local coin, will probably see him here in a few days, and he'll be mad as hell that I didn't respond." Lance looked thoughtful, then worried. "What will he do with thee? And he finds thee. What'll he do to me? Can thee talk to thy mother?" "Mama, she doesn't like this planet, says it's too eerie for her tastes. But she might be able to talk to Daddy. I'll see if I can signal her, but I won't say where we are yet." She entered some codes into the computer. Mother's silent pager is confirming receipt of the page. Now hopefully she can get to a private comm screen and answer me. The next 2 minutes passed with agonizing slowness. Then a quiet tone sounded from the computer. She turned to Lance. I'm going to activate personal video only. She'll see my head and shoulders, but no background. If you talk, she'll hear you, so maybe you'd better be quiet at first. Crystal pressed a key, and her mother's face appeared. My baby! How can you do this to me? Mom, I'm okay. I called you because I'm not ready to talk to Dad just yet. Look, I know I ran away, but I'm of age, honestly. My little adventure is not going at all the way I'd planned, but if you could listen for a moment, I think you'll agree that I've stumbled onto something much better for me than simply trapezing through space. Her mother looked thoughtful. Yes, you are an adult now, but to your father and I, you'll always be our baby, our only child. She sighed deeply. Our plan had been for you to accompany us on the trade rounds a few times, then enroll you at a good university. Then you'd be able to find a man and settle down somewhere. I must admit that shipboard is not the place to raise a child, but I made an agreement with Dad that you would have some exposure to trading culture so you could make a meaningful choice later. Well, personally I find time on a freighter like being in a prison, and I do have some news that just might satisfy you. It's true that I had planned to run away on a 6-month holiday in the backwoods, but it didn't turn out like that. Instead, I stumbled upon a local university here, and I've enrolled in one of the colleges. Her mother looked shocked. Mother of God, you? Slowly the color returned to her face. It could have been worse. At least you're not walking the streets. Any nice young gentlemen there? Crystal blushed. Mom, you're not going to believe this. I'd like you to meet Lance. She activated full video and pulled Lance into view. Mother made a careful inspection. Well, we always knew you had good taste. Greetings, Lance. Lance nodded, bemused. Mother turned back to Crystal. My, this does complicate things. What will your father say? Tell Dad to lighten up. I'd like to introduce Lance to you in person, to both you and Dad, but I don't want Dad out for blood. I'll talk to him. We'll be down in half a day. Where can we meet you? We'll meet at the Dead Horse in town. That's in Crossroads. Will you be able to find it? I'm sure your dad will. How long a journey is it from Landing? It's most of a day's ride with a caravan. It's the first town you can get to from Landing. Her mother looked relieved. So you're not halfway around the planet. Good. Well, I guess we'll be seeing you tomorrow evening, even if we have to charter a transport. I'll talk to Dad. I'll drop you a page when we get near. You did leave a lot of stuff in number the holds. Can I get anything for you? Crystal pondered. Some of my knickknacks, perhaps? Local coinage would do better. I landed a scholarship with a stipend, so I'm not hurting. I've purchased outfits in the local style and suiting the local weather, which I'm told can get harsh. There isn't that much I need, really. Okay, dear. I'll select some things and talk to Dad. Page me anytime you think of anything else. The screen blackened. Crystal disengaged the communicator and closed her computer before turning to Lance. That was a good idea to talk to Mother. Thanks, lover. Lance shook his head, still much at a loss. Then a sudden fear creased in his brow. And thy father takes thee off planet now. Thee and I will surely perish, we being heart-bonded. Surely thy father can understand that much. He's even now a part of this planet as much as this planet is a part of thee, as much as thee and I are a part of each other. The bonds be firm now. I know this, even if I borrow thy skills to sense it. Hold me, lover. Hold me tight, Crystal said. She sat still in his arms until her heart ceased its wild pounding. Thank you for joining today's episode of Read with Rave. I apologize for my stumbling, but I'm working on reading better, so I appreciate your patience. If you liked, please comment down below if you want me to do more of these. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and don't forget to splash the bell icon so you never miss another video, and I will catch you all on the next wave. Bye!